Well, welcome back to Cardboard Swords and another Fab for Less budget brew. Today we've got a £50 total card value to spend on a classic constructed deck. We're brewing Briar, and on 922 living legend points, this might be her last dance. Let's get in. Well, Briar turned up with the release of Tales of Aria, and let's be honest, in the sealed format she was pretty broken. She later turned out to be pretty broken in the classic constructed format too, and she had to be errated so that you couldn't stack the embodiment of Earth tokens. Her ability now is, when the first attack action card you control deals damage to an opposing hero, create an embodiment of Earth token, and the embodiment of Earth token enables your non-attack action cards to block for one more. And Briar's second ability says, whenever you play your second non-attack action each turn, you create an embodiment of lightning, and that embodiment lets your next attack gain go again. To make the most of Briar's ability then, we're going to need a pretty even split of attack actions and non-attack actions in our deck. And another reason we want a relatively even split is to utilise her very broken weapon, Rosetta Thorn. Rosetta Thorn costs 1 to swing for 2 damage, but if you played a non-attack action and an attack action that turn, it comes in for 2 arcane as well. That rate of 1 resource for 4 damage on a weapon, especially when it's split over arcane and combat damage, is insanely good. In the head slot, we're going to be running Hope Merchant's Hood. Okay, hear me out. Because we've got a pretty even split of attack actions and non-attack actions, it is possible to draw a full hand without any attacks. Sad times. But the Hope Merchant's Hood saves us from that. It can also help us in a pinch when we're really digging for the cards we need. And on top of this, other options are just very expensive. Aether Ironweave is just a very strong card, blocks for 1, provides us some resources. Vexing Quill Hand threatens 2 arcane and it's got Arcane Barrier built in, and Snapdragon Scalers is just the go-to leg piece. Crown of Dichotomy adds some more Arcane Barrier and has some utility against fatigue. Allegro is a dance term to describe movements performed at a fast tempo, and we've got a good number of low to the ground zero cost attacks with Go Again, enabling you to command the tempo of the fight. Ravenous Rebel has unconditional Go Again, and Scar for a Scar has Go Again as long as you've managed your life total so that it's less than your opponent's. Lightning Surge has Go Again, so long as it's played from Arsenal, and 0 for 4 is a very good rate. Vigor Rush is a 4 attack for 1 resource, which isn't as good on rate, but its Go Again is pretty much built in this deck as we're going to be playing a non-attack action card before it. We're also running Meet and Greet in this deck, which only has Go Again if you've dealt arcane damage. Now we do have a few ways in our deck to enable this. We can pop our trusty arm equipment to make 2 rune chants. We can play Skyfire Lanterns, which primarily is a 0 cost non-attack action, but it can also create a rune chant incidentally. And we also run Sting of Sorcery, which does a lot of work in this deck, including dealing arcane. And don't forget, we've always got Briar's ability to make embodiments of lightning. This allows us to play some stuff without Go Again and throw some different shapes. Coaxer Commotion's got an on-hit effect that can allow us to go a little bit wider on our big turns when we really need to, but there is of course a downside that we need to consider in enabling our opponent to have the same benefits. Snatch is a huge threat in this deck and it's usually a must-block card, but if you've got an embodiment of lightning, that means you've played 2 non-attack actions, so it's usually buffed to 7 or even more with the threat of Go Again and on-hit draw a card. And Exude Confidence is a card that Wizard and Control players hate. It forces them to block inefficiently if they want to do anything else on your turn, like play defense reactions or instants. So between them, these cards force some really awkward blocking situations. In order to get the most out of Rosetta Thorn, we often need to lead and follow our attack actions with non-attacks. So 0 cost non-attack action cards do a lot for us in this deck, not to mention their ability to defend for 3 if we've managed to get an embodiment of Earth. Nimblism and Bramble Spark, both capable of giving our attacks a buff, and Bramble Spark's also an arcane damage enabler. And we've already mentioned Skyfire Lanterns as a 0 cost non-attack action with Go Again and a possible upside. Sting of Sorcery is an even better 0 cost non-attack action with Go Again. It pitches for 3 and on some of our go wide turns it can even threaten 3 or 4 damage. Gorganian Tome is basically a totally free non-attack action. It doesn't block and it doesn't pitch, but what it does do is it replaces itself when you play it, and if you ever manage to be the second player that plays it, it feels really good. And we're also running Tome of the Art Knight. Now you should pretty much treat this as a 1 cost attack action with Go Again. Although we've got a pretty even split of attacks and non-attacks in this deck, it's far from certain that you're going to draw from this. About 50% of the time, it works every time. But here's a non-attack action that can really facilitate some big turns. Force of Nature. Force of Nature says whenever an attack action card you control hits this turn, if its power is greater than its base power, you draw a card, and if it's fused, Your next attack gains +1. This card can be the instigator for some pretty ridiculous turns. But talking of ridiculous turns, you ain't seen nothing yet. Channel Mount Heroic is quite simply a pretty redonkulous card. It allows us to break the maths of Flesh and Blood, and quite a lot of our games simply come down to whether we draw this or not. It's a non-attack action with Go Again, it costs 3, and it says attack action cards you control have +3 power. It has Channel Earth, requiring you to pitch Earth cards to it, but as long as we can, and we keep this around, we're winning the game. So we're going to need that choreography to underpin our dance moves. That means we need Earth cards. We're running Tome of Harvests. It's a blue pitch Earth card that can also help us dig for that Channel Mount Heroic. Autumn's Touch is a 3-cost attack that comes in for 5, but more importantly it pitches for 3 and it blocks for 3 and it's got Earth written on it. Amulet of Earth pitches for 3, it's a 0-cost non-attack action with a possible upside. Evergreen pitches blue and it's got Earth written on it. It's also a 3-cost attack for 5. We've got Earthlaw Surge, a 2-cost non-attack action that buffs your next attack by 3. And Pulse of Candlehold is legendary, so it's a 1-of in the deck. It allows you to fetch Channel Mount Heroic from the graveyard, slap it on top of the deck, along with a blue Earth card to pitch for it. And obviously we've got some backing dancers in our sideboard to help us with specific matchups. Lead the Charge is good to dance around ice heroes playing things like Hypothermia. And in the same matchups it's unlikely we're going to be able to go as wide, so we need to play some bigger attacks like Fiondar's Fighting Spirit. We've opted for the yellow one here as well because it can provide us with some extra resources. It also has a 6-powered attack, so it's good against Dromai for popping dragons. In those ice matchups we've really got to make our big turns pay, so we're packing a couple of energy potions to help us dance around things like Blizzard or Channel Lake Frigid. Sigil of Suffering is just a really good utility piece. Usually it blocks for 4, unless our opponents are willing to pay for the arcane damage, and this can help us against those heroes with big on-hit effects. And we all know that Dash is going to be pretty big in the current meta, so we're packing some smashing good times for those matchups. Let's have a look at a few sample turns. Now a little thing I like to do with aggressive decks when I'm goldfishing is called 0 to 60. Basically you output 60 damage in as fewer turns as possible. Doesn't really measure a deck's aggressiveness or anything like that. It's just something to aim for, and it takes you through the lines of play that are going to output the most damage. We're joining this 0 to 60 exercise on about turn 3. I've managed to chip away about 20 damage, and you can see we've got the Channel Mount Heroic in hand, but we've got no Earth cards to be able to pitch to it to keep it around. So we've put out as much damage as we can this turn. We're going to Arsenal the Lightning Surge, because that'll again Go Again when we play it from Arsenal. Keep the Channel Mount Heroic in hand and hopefully we draw an Earth card to pitch, which we have done. The main aim of this turn then is to set up our Channel Mount Heroic for a big turn next turn. If we can put out any damage as well, that's going to be a bonus. So we play out the Channel Mount Heroic. The Lightning Surge from Arsenal will now come in for 7 with Go Again. Problem is we've got 2 non-attack actions now in hand. That leaves us with 2 options really. We can pitch one and play out Rosetta Thorn and pocket the other one for a big turn next turn, or we can gamble on the Tome of the Art Knight. You should never gamble, but we've chosen to gamble, and we've lost. It's not horrific, we can still swing Rosetta Thorn for another 4, we've got the resources up to do that. Problem is we don't have a card to put in Arsenal to set up for the really big turn and really capitalise on the Channel Mount Heroic that we've kept out this turn. So that's a life lesson for you folks, don't gamble on Tome of the Art Knight. Anyway, that was turn 4. Let's see if we can finish things on this turn. Let's see what we draw. Okay, we've got a problem. We've got all attacks, none of them with Go Again. We've got Snapdragon Scalers, but even so, we're not going to have a big turn here that we were hoping for. Luckily, we've got a way to mitigate against this RNG with some more RNG. We're going to use the Hope Merchant's Hood. We'll pocket the Exude Confidence because that's just a good card. We'll use the Hope Merchants to shuffle these away and draw 3 fresh ones. Okay. Oh no, it's another tome. So tempting. For the purpose of a 0 to 60 exercise, I always assume that I'm on more life than my opponent, so things like Life for a Life don't have built-in Go Again. So we've been a bit unlucky with our draws here, but we're going to try and output as much damage as possible, and this time that involves gambling again. So we're going to play out both our non-attack actions, which will create an embodiment of lightning. We've gambled on the tome, and the gamble's paid off this time. They both come to hand. we can then play out our Exude Confidence, which will come in for 1 Arcane from the Sting of Sorcery, plus 7, and it has Go Again thanks to the embodiment of Lightning. Then we can pop our Aether Ironweave, that'll give us 2 resources. In fact, let's just get naked, gloves are off. Vexing Quillhand creates us 2 rune chants as well. And then our Meet and Greet will gain Go Again if we've dealt Arcane damage this turn. And we've threatened 4 Arcane by the time we play this. So Meet and Greet comes in for 2 rune chants, 1 Arcane from the Sting of Sorcery, plus another 7. And that leaves us 1 resource to come in with the Rosetta Thorn. And Rosetta will come in for 2 Arcane, 2 physical damage, and the rune chant as well. So even on this suboptimal Channel Mount Heroic turn, we've still managed to threaten 23 damage, but the deck is capable of a lot more. Time to have a look at the deck stats. So we've got 22 blue pitch cards in the deck, and 18 earth cards means we're not usually struggling to find them. And we've got a fairly even split of attacks and non-attacks, 27 attacks and 33 non-attacks. I wouldn't want our numbers to change much further than that. As far as the budget goes then, we managed to squeeze in 23 Majestics into the deck, as well as 17 rare, and 2 super rare from way back when that was a rarity. Those Tome of the Arknights, they're just so tempting. The aim here was to have our overall card value go no more than £50. We put our list into the Cardmarket Shopping Wizard and it came in at €54.28. That means that with the current exchange rate, our overall deck value came in at £47.90. Now that is a good price for a deck that I do think would be able to go toe to toe with a lot of other more expensive decks. But the deck is called Last Dance Briar for a reason. She's on 922 living legend points, meaning that this ProQuest season might well be the last one before she becomes living legend. But if you're after a competitive CC deck on a budget, you might want to join Briar for her last dance. Now if you wanted to upgrade this deck, there are a few cards we left out just because of cost. Swarming Gloomveil's one of those, but at €15 each, that just wouldn't fit in our budget. A non-attack action option that we had to leave out is Revel in Runeblood. At €8.50 per card, 3 of these would just take us too far over budget, but you might consider these if you're wanting to upgrade. Thanks for watching this instalment of Fab for Less. I hope you like what you saw. If you want to take the deck for a spin, the list is in the description. Good luck and let me know how you get on with it. I've got a Fab and Chill gameplay video of this deck coming up in the next few days. In the meantime, please like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.